Today we are chatting installment loans. Let me grab my colors here. So, typically, an installment loan, get my dates set here, is going to be a loan paid in equal payments over a specified time. So again, that specified time, it might be a year, it might be 10 years. If it's a loan on a house, it might be 30 years. Okay, so, but typically it's, hey, you're going to be paying this much every month. That way we know over this time you can get it paid off. There's not a lot of people out there that can pay off like a $100,000 loan in like a one-time shot. It just doesn't happen very often. So that's how we would work this. Now, how much those payments are depends on a couple of things. First is what's called a down payment, which is cash that you can pay now when you purchase the item. So maybe you want to buy a car that's $10,000, but you only have $1,000 right now. So you could use that $1,000 as what's called a down payment to make your payment smaller, and also kind of as a sign of good faith to the people who are selling you the car that, hey, you're serious about this, to be able to pay that off. And then the amount financed is the rest of the loan after any down payment. So like in that car example I was talking about, the $1,000 would be my down payment, the $9,000 would be the amount financed, the amount left I still was going to pay once I've done that. So, pretty straightforward on what this is going to look like. Now, the interesting part gets to be, once we get past this down payment amount financed, because this isn't really going to be fancy in here, but once we get past there, getting into, there's my other one, how we actually calculate this. So, down payment, let's call it the DP here. We'll shorten some things up. Because normally whatever you put down for a down payment ends up being a percentage of what the loan is. And if you don't think of it that way, the person giving you the loan probably will. So when you sign something, they probably would change that. So like if it was $10,000 and you paid $1,000, that would be 10%, because 1,000 divided by 10,000 would be that number. And then the amount financed is the cash price minus the down payment. Now, while you're jotting that down, I do want to say one more thing about the down payment. It may not be a percent every time. It could just be a number. Like we said before, hey, I'll give you $1,000 down. Okay, we'll write that in. Most of the time it'll be a percent, though. So I shouldn't say it's going to be the percent every single time. And so, as we start to take a peek here, okay, Oscar is buying a new TV for $9.99. Oh, the infamous 99s to make something sound cheaper. He made a down payment of 10% and financed the remainder. How much did he finance? Okay, so the down payment is the amount of the item times the percent, you know what I'm going to say next, as a decimal. And we're talking about money. So we're going to be rounding to the nearest cent if this does not end up being a whole dollar answer. So $99.90 would be my down payment. Now, if I'm Oscar, I'm just handing him 100 and saying, you know, figure it out. But so then, if that's true, then our amount financed is how much we were paying to begin with. Still $9.99 minus my down payment. Excuse me. That is a lot of nines. $899.10. And that would be how much we'd be paying for the remainder over however long Oscar is going to get to be able to pay that off. And so again, just to get a couple, so we make sure we've got a good foundation here. Ella's buying a new dishwasher for $850. All right. She made a down payment of 15%. Again, if you're not sure on a percentage sometime, just divide it by 100. That'll get you your percentage. So $127.50. And then again, for the amount she financed, that pen is dying on me. We're just going to switch up here. Minus $27.50, not plus. I started to write something else. Didn't get that in there correctly. So $722.50. And we're set there. So amount financed, nothing too bad. Quick percentage and then a quick subtract, and we've got that set. So this is where we're going to bounce slightly, because as you notice here, we've got the practice problems down here. So I'm going to put a pause for a moment on doing problems. We'll come back and chat how we're going to play with that here momentarily, because we got a couple of examples now to work with. And so the other portion of what we're going to be taking on today, excuse me, mercy, is going to be simple interest installment loans. So, because you're not always, when you borrow money from people, going to get them to just nicely let you borrow it and not give you anything left with it. So, a simple interest installment loan, different from just an installment loan, means you borrow money and you pay it back in installments or payments with interest. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest, probably unless you're borrowing the money from a parent, a family member, a really nice close friend, you're probably not going to just get an installment loan and they're going to say, here, take my money and keep it for a year and I don't want anything else back. So this time we're going to pay it back similarly to what we did before, but now we're going to tack interest in to the deal as well. So this is kind of repetitive. What is a monthly payment? The money you pay back each month to be paying off your loan. Luckily, most of the time, Most of the time, depending on interest, when you make a monthly payment, it will be reducing the amount you owe. Does not always happen though. Well, we'll chat about that as we get a little further in too. Because there are actually some things out there called interest-only loans where your principal never goes down. Why anybody would sign up for that, I have no idea. And then the annual percentage rate, APR, which showed up in our credit search that we did the other day, is the interest rate per year on your loan. So if you go to an auto dealer and they say, hey, we have 4.9% APR, it means that's how much interest you're going to be paying on whatever your balance is on a yearly basis. So those numbers can be very important in trying to keep your price down on things. So luckily, there's not a whole lot of math to this that we're going to have to keep track of. So we'll see how this goes. Okay. So, for instance, we don't have a general, how do I want to put this? A general example that will necessarily work perfectly for everything. Most of the time when you're looking at a chart like they have down here or doing installments, it's based on a loan of $100. I can make it for other amounts, but the $100 is kind of our baseline. So, it's the amount of our loan divided by 100 I'm going to have to explain this one when we're actually doing them down below, because this just seems weird when you're first looking at it. You're like, okay, wait. The monthly payment is the amount of the loan, whatever that is, divided by 100. But then I'm multiplying it by the monthly payment. Wait a minute, but I'm finding the monthly payment. So how am I multiplying by the monthly payment? This is where that 100 is going to come back in. So I'm going to try my best to make sure I explain this thoroughly so it makes a little more sense the way that it's written. Again, this is why the bankers and the accountants make the money that they do, because this can get a little complex at times. Okay, so the total amount paid is going to be this is why in this section we're going to do like a page at a time and take our time here. The number of payments times the monthly payments. Okay, so basically it'll be what we get in the first answer, and then we're just going to know how many payments there were to begin with, and just multiply them. And again, in words, it will not make as much sense when we actually start doing numbers here in a minute. And then finally, the finance charge. Keep always using the number right in front of it here. The total amount paid minus the amount financed. In case you aren't told in advance, most of the time, especially with larger purchases, they'll tell you right in the contract, hey, when you get to the end, if you make all your payments on time for the exact amount, here's how much you're going to end up paying us in interest. So you can see that in advance. So here's how this works. We're going to actually figure out monthly payments for people based, again, on this installment loan of 100 type thing. So let me move this up a little bit so we can get the chart in here. So these numbers that are in the chart vary on how long you're borrowing money for, so anywhere from like 6 months up to 5 years. And anywhere between 8 and 15%. This is getting closer to where we're at actually now on a lot of this stuff. And so you're like, so what are all these other numbers? These other numbers would be if you were to borrow $100 for 6 months, at 15%, you can start seeing how much you would owe with the simple interest. So let me explain. I'm going to move this up so we can actually get the problem in here. Okay. Find the monthly payment for a $100 loan with a term of 12 months. Okay, here's 12 months. And a rate of 11%. So, you're like, wait, I just get to take it right out of the chart? You do. You're just going to follow over and go here. You're like, well, why does that makes no sense? So, if I borrowed $100 for 12 months at 11%, okay, let me grab my calculator here for a minute. If I made 12 payments of $8.84, that would be $106.08. You're like, well, wait a minute. Why would this not add up to like 111, let's say? APR takes a couple of other things into... Oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to start talking in accountant speech. It's one of the reasons I went away from accounting when I was in college and went into education instead. It actually ends up being less than what you're going to be getting physically. I'm trying to figure out a better way to explain that, but it's escaping me. So as I'm pondering, we're going to keep looking for some of these numbers as I try to wrap my head around a better way to explain this. Okay, 60 months, 8%. Okay. I think I just figured it out. One more, and then I think I have a way that I might be able to explain this better. All right, $100 loan, 24 months, rate of 12%. What you're actually finding, because I shouldn't have put a $sign on this. I think that's where I started to screw things up. You're looking more at in addition to what you're paying. I believe, let me see if that is what we go into next so I can see. Yeah, okay. This is going to explain it. I don't have to do it because it's going to be in the mathematics. All right. We're going to be doing some flipping back and forth, so don't get your other page too far away here. Okay. One part where we can put it all together, then you can be done with this for the time being. Joy obtained an installment loan of $1,500 to purchase a new laptop computer. The annual percentage rate is 9%. She will repay the loan in 12 months. What is the finance charge? You're like, okay. So now, the monthly payment, we've got it right here. We've got the steps. It's the amount of the loan. If we get there, we're getting there. $1,500 divided by 100 times the monthly payment for a $100 loan at 9% for 12 months. All right, hang on a minute. Oh, I'm going to rip this so we can do this easier. So we've got 9% for 12 months. 12 months, 9% is 8.75. That's the actual number. It's not like a percent where you're going to divide that by 100. Here's where we can start to see how this works now. So each month, Joy is going to be paying $131.25. Because I'm trying to figure out, I can't just do it 1,500 times 9% and call it good, because each month your balance is going down because you paid some last month, so you're owing a little less interest each time, if that makes any sense. So like, let's say I paid $150 the first month. Now I only owe interest on $1,350. So that interest payment is getting smaller, but I'm making the same payment every time. That way they don't have you making a different payment every month. You're going, oh my gosh, why does this keep changing? That's how they make it consistent, and luckily we don't have to do a lot of calculating with that ourselves, because that gets a little kooky at times. Because if we just did 1,500 times 9%, added that to the 1,500 and divided by 12, it'd be off anyway. So over time, that's just kind of the middle number that we're going to end up with that'll get it paid off, is what it actually ends up being, if I showed you every single one. So you're like, okay, that's the first step, Hardy. That's the first step. Find the total amount repaid. Okay, here's the easy part. 12 months, 12 payments, times my answer from number 1. Twelve times 131.25. So, as you can see a little bit here, when I did my other answer and said, hey, if I'd have just paid 9% on the 1,500 the whole time, it'd be 1,635. Hey, it's actually less. Right. Because I'm paying a little each month, which is making me pay a little bit less and a little bit less. That's why we like some of the complexity, because it's saving me $60 that I'm getting to do it this way, and that they're thinking well enough to let me be able to do that. So, the finance charge then is the amount you repaid, so our answer from step 2, minus the amount I borrowed to begin with. So I ended up spending $75 in interest to be able to buy this laptop and have it now. Not too bad of a deal. But luckily for us, again, all the steps are always going to be there for us, so it won't be too bad. Okay, one more smoothly through to make this a little bit easier. Noah, $3,700 to purchase a used vehicle. Annual percentage rate is 8%. Must repay the loan in 60 months. 60 months for $3,700. Okay. So, amount of the loan divided by 100. Times, all right, 8%, 60 months. 60 months, get on the screen, 8%, 2.03. So 3,700 divided by, divided by hard. I said divide and I hit multiply. Times 2.03. So 75.11 will be my monthly payment. And I'm going to be doing that for 60 months. So 60 times my answer from step 1. $4,506.60. Will be the amount I paid at the end. And then to finish, my finance charge is how much I paid in total. So whatever I got from answer number 2 here, minus the amount I borrowed to begin with. Okay, so here, even though Noah's percentage was lower, he borrowed more, and the longer you borrow, the more you're going to end up paying back. That's why if you ever look in, when we get into buying a house, you're going to find out whatever, typically, when people buy houses, by the time they've paid it off, they've paid about double, at least, for whatever it is, just because it's so long, and people just don't have that kind of money. So, excuse me. Practice problems on 5, practice problems on 4 are the ones to do. So it's 6 problems total to play with, and we'll keep going through there. We'll move from there tomorrow. We're not going to push forward anymore. We pushed more than enough. So 4 and 5, the problems at the, or I mean 3 and 5. I did 3 and 5. Dead gummit party. 4 is where the chart is. Page 3 and 5. I'll get this right yet. I got keys up front and in the back here for you. And we'll wrap